The other half of the fiscal cliff that nobody's talking about now, or not as much talk is being talked about, is spending. There's something they call the sequester. We had a big fight over the debt ceiling about a year and a half ago, and we attached statutory caps. You can't spend more than a certain amount. Well, since then, we've broken that about 20 times. How do we break it? When a bill comes forward that breaks the statutory caps on how much we're supposed to spend, they just simply have a vote, and they deem it not so. They can deem that night is day and day is night with a majority vote. So we have a rule that says you spend so much, and if the bill spends more than that, we bring up a point of order. It says you're exceeding the Budget Control Act. And they just override us with a majority vote and say we deem it not so. And they go on their merry way. So anyway, the other half of the cliff is spending, and you say, well, what's the problem? Why is that a cliff? To reduce spending. The sequester, that's what sequester meant, is to reduce spending. And they say that's part of the cliff. And I say, well, I'm not even understanding that that is a cliff. I think that's what we need to do, because to me, the real cliff is not taxes or spending. It's the debt crisis that looms. It's as you go over the cliff, you look into an abyss, and that abyss is the debt crisis that's coming. It's an enormous piling up of debt that we one day suffer the repercussions for. Nobody knows exactly when it comes, but it is coming. You can look at all the statistics and see that we are being squeezed. The entitlement spending is growing so rapidly. Entitlements, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security are 2/3 of the budget. They are growing so rapidly, plus interest, that they will consume all of the revenue. There'll be no money for roads, no money for anything. If anybody in this room believes in some government program, you come to talk to me, there's not going to be any money for it. It's all being squeezed. So whether you're conservative or liberal, you ought to be for fixing the entitlements, because you're not going to get anything from government until you fix the entitlements. That includes national defense. It's all being squeezed. The entitlements are growing rapidly. So what did the president say 2 weeks ago? It's too late to talk about entitlements. We don't have enough time. This is, I think, why people are so unhappy with their government. Because we lurch from one deadline to the next. We have no time. We run around like a chicken with our head cut off saying, what do? The cliff's coming. We must act. We must do something. Oh, we don't have time to really do anything, so we're going to do something, but we don't have time to fix anything. I talked to the president a year and a half ago with all the Republicans and myself in a room, and I asked him directly that question. I said, why don't you work with us to fix entitlements? It's not a Republican problem. I didn't break Social Security. Democrats didn't break Social Security either. Well, we may both have been responsible for it, but it's not a partisan problem. It's really a problem that we're living longer. And if anybody's fault, if you want to blame somebody, blame your grandparents. They had too many damn kids. You know, that's nobody's fault. What can we do about that? But there are a whole bunch of kids born after World War II, and now they're all graduating to retirement. And so that, and that we're living long, is just a demographic problem. You fix it, you've got to raise the age gradually and means test the benefits, which gets to another compromise. The media says you won't compromise because you don't want to raise taxes. Well, because I think raising rates, you may get the opposite, less revenue, and I can't just throw my brain out because the president won the election and say, well, let's just raise rates because he won the election. I think he'll get less revenue, and I think we will get less revenue with higher rates. But is there a compromise? Is there something that I will come to him and say, or to the other side, because the other side says rich aren't paying their fair share, which is incorrect. But if you're going to at least accept that and give him some kind of benefit of the doubt, why don't we do it on entitlements? Why don't we say to the rich, you're going to get less Social Security? Why don't we say to the rich, you're going to have to pay for your Medicare? See, and most people don't quite get this yet, but your Medicare you're not paying for. You pay $1 in taxes for $3 in benefits. That's why it's $35 to $40 trillion short. I don't have any problem, though, with having the rich pay more. It doesn't fix the whole problem, but it gets started and accepts a little bit of the president's premise that rich need to pay more. But we do have to remember when we go through all this and they tell you the rich aren't paying their fair share that it is just untrue. The top 1% pay 40% of the income tax. The top 5% pay 70% of the income tax. 75,000 and above is about the median. 50% of the public pay 96% of the income tax. The Bush tax cuts, which the president despises and wants to get rid of, actually made the tax code more progressive and actually brought in more revenue. People say, oh, that's not true, revenue's down. Revenue is down because we're in an economic slump right now because you're growing at 1%. When the Bush tax cuts are enacted in 2003, revenue actually goes up. We actually have the rich paying more of the percentage of the revenue. In 2007, 2008, we have a change, but the change is we go into a recession. So you have to ask yourself, do I just hate rich people enough that we got to make them pay more just because I hate rich people, or do we want the economy to grow? And I think they're somewhat mutually exclusive. I think you just raise taxes on rich people. Who in here doesn't work for a rich person? Who in here doesn't sell something to a rich person? Think about the person who makes $35,000 a year and works at the Mercedes dealer here in town. Rich people buy Mercedes. You know, do you think the guy making $35,000 a year is helped by putting a penalty tax on the rich who may not buy a Mercedes this year, may wait one more year to buy it? We've done this before. And it's also not good to base things on emotion, your emotional dislike for people who have more money than you, than it's to base it on reality. We've tried it before. We had a special 5% tax on yachts. Get those people who have yachts. Well, what happened is the people who were buying the yachts went to the Bahamas to buy their yachts, and the people making the yachts in New England making $50,000 a year lost their jobs. It just doesn't work. It frankly doesn't work. It's not really that American, I think, to pit one group of people against another group of people. Instead, we should be talking about how we get more rich people. How do we make more middle-class people rich? How do we make more poor people middle class? And so I think those are the policies we should be talking about instead of getting worn down into this talk of the fiscal cliff.